Okay?
Let's start, Eric.
Salut à tout le monde. So we are in Charnay right now. So the place where we live with Laurence. Charnay is in the Beaujolais. So what you see behind me is the village and the vineyard that doesn't belong to me. This vineyard is from the Vineyard project. So Vineyard is a community from the village that decided a few years ago, 12 years, 13 years ago, to start growing vines and making wine in a very specific way. So, and it's the only vineyard that I'm working here around the Beaujolais. So Martin, my son, is in charge with the vineyard in Saint-Julien and in Brezem. You will meet with him later, and he will show you the vineyards there. So we will start here with this vineyard that is so-called Fukuoka vineyard. In fact, it's not really grown according to Fukuoka philosophy. This is more a no-till seeding cover crop type of vineyard management. So as you can see, the cover crop is quite high right now. It's not low on the ground. You see what was seeded years ago. This is Welsh. This is clover, you know clover, of course. So these are legumes. They fix the nitrogen into the soil. And we let it grow until we need to get access to the vines. So as you can see, there are vines buried under the legumes here. And so we will soon need to access to the vines so we can get rid of the unwanted buds like these ones. This is called ébourgeonnage. Martin will talk about that later. And as soon as we need to get access to the vines, we will roll the whole cover crop down with something called rolofaka. But we will not cut it, and we won't till. We use no plowing system, no intercept under the vines. Huh? The wine that we are making here, for those who know, it's called Calico. Calico because it's a mix of many colors of grape and a mix of many grapes. We have many Muscat here, many Chasselas, many Pinot. And so we blend all these grapes. We harvest them the same day. The community gather for the weekend. We harvest them. And we blend everything. And we make a white wine called Calico. I have a bottle here. We'll show you.
Laurence, on your left-hand side, you have your finger on the lens somewhere. There's a...
Okay. Is it better?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this?
that's it. Now you really have it on the lens.
Okay.
So this is the Calico.
Okay.
It's cloudy. It's the only cloudy wine that I make, by the way. Okay, so we will walk through the vineyard and go up to the cellar, and I will explain you what was the idea.
Tu leur expliques c'est ce qu'ils voient la cave là.
So yeah, we will walk up there to my cellar. Yeah, we walk through the vineyard. So the whole idea here was to make a very minimal, frugal way of growing vines. So no mechanical means, no expensive machines, and self-sufficient soil. So the idea of seeding here grain, legumes, was to keep the ground self-sufficient. So that's a very nice idea. In fact, if we would do this according to Bill Mollison permaculture philosophy or Fukuoka, we should grow between the rows of vines. We should grow other, like vegetables or the fruits, and harvest them. Huh? But this is a bit too complicated for a community. So what we are doing here is only letting the cover crop grow, and this cover crop will feed the soil and so on. As you can see, this is very late. This cover crop here keeps a lot of freshness and humidity to the soil, and we lose about 1 or 2 weeks of maturity in a way. So this is still very small. We will start probably the bourgeonnage 2 weeks from now. While in Saint-Julien, where you will see Martin, it's already time for a bourgeonnage. So this is 1 hectare of vines. Again, we do something like 10 different grapes. And the total crop that we make here is 3,000 bottles of wine, which is quite low, especially with the varietals like Chasselas or Muscat. This is quite a low yield, and I doubt it would be possible to do this if you try to make money out of it. So I think the concept is very nice. We are glad that we can do this, but I will definitely not do this in all my vineyards. As you will see later with Martin in Saint-Julien. But the project has no commercial purpose. We drink most of these wines. We don't sell them. It's 50 people working in the community. So we share most of the bottles, and we send a few to the US so we can pay the bills. We have 2 other vineyards in the Vineyard project. One with the Pinot Noir. We make a wine there called Murmure, and one with Chardonnay and Pinot Gris, where we make a blend typical of old school Beaujolais Blanc that is called Mine de Rien. So the total, out of 2 hectares, we produce a total of 4,000. Okay, guys. Sorry, we lost the connection at one point. I don't know when. So we are now in my aging cellar, where I bring back all the wines that we make in Saint-Julien in Brezem for aging in concrete tanks like these ones. Foudre. I like Foudre and demi-nuit mostly, a few barrels to make the addition. So this is only, I would say, 1/3 of the wines that I'm making that are coming back here, where they will spend between 1 and 3 years in aging. So again, this cellar was built in the 18th century mostly. It hasn't been used for almost a century before I came here 20 years ago, and it's a wonderful cellar, extremely cool. Though the wines can feel the seasons, which I think it's very important too. So it's warmer during the summer, cooler during the winter, and the temperature goes from 10 Celsius at the lowest, and goes up to 14, 16 Celsius at the maximum. So after the aging here, the wines will be usually racked and blended in the concrete tanks, where they will rest for a few weeks before we do the bottling. So all the wines that you see here are 17, 18, or 19 vintage. And it's mostly Brezem Vieille Vigne, Vieille Serine, Saint-Julien Vieille Serine, and the 19 Brezem and Saint-Julien Jeune Vigne. So that's all the wines that I have here that will be bottled later in the year. Usually we bottle the Brezem and the Saint-Julien right after harvest, so October. And the Vieille Vigne are bottled according to how they taste, but usually a lot longer after, like the 17 is still in barrel and not bottled yet. This is the reason why I chose to stay in Charnay to do the aging for those wines, is that this kind of cellar is absolutely impossible to find in the Rhône Valley, especially near Saint-Julien or Brezem, that were not, historically speaking, that were not vine-making regions. So we don't have any cellars in those areas. And in Beaujolais, we have tons of magnificent cellars like this, empty, because people don't age Beaujolais anymore. So that's the story, and why we are still aging our wines here. So I guess it's probably time to meet with Martin in Saint-Julien, and we will catch up with you later at our place in Charnay.
Eric, one question did come up from Gab Bowler, and I think everybody is kind of curious. How did you choose the grapes that you planted in that vineyard? What was the reasoning behind the grapes?
Well, the grapes were mostly good grapes for limestone, heavy limestone and clay soils. So we typically, Gamay is a terrible place on those soils. Huh? So the Chasselas is a very good grape on limestone and clay, especially heavy soils. Muscat does well. Muscat does well almost everywhere. The Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir are also doing very well on limestone and clay soils. So that was the whole idea. It was to bring here a lot of grapes from different places, not very typical to the Beaujolais, but that are doing well on limestone and clay. So we won't be in competition with the local growers.
Is the Chasselas, is it Massal from?
Yeah, it's Massal. It's Chasselas Rose, Chasselas Blanc from a Massal selection, yes.
Okay, we'll go to Mark.
Alsace. This is a Chasselas coming from Alsace. It's not from Switzerland.
Mm-hmm. So we'll go to Martin now, and Eric will go to the grafting table, and we'll catch up with Eric again in a little bit.
Okay, see you later. Bye.
All right, Martin.
Do you hear me or?
Yeah.
Maybe you have to... Okay, it's all good. So I don't know if you can see clearly behind me, but this is the Old Vine Serine in Saint-Julien. I am in Saint-Julien right now. I'm just going to give you a little overview of the area around. That's the vineyard. It's the neighbors' vines. And that's the Ouvèze Valley where Saint-Julien is. And just over there is the Rhône Valley behind the first hills. And also down there, you can't really see, but just behind the first trees is where we're building the new cellar and the new farming facility. So Eric asked me to be in this parcel to talk to you because he wanted me to show you this parcel specifically and tell you a little bit about it. This parcel, so that's the old Serene, and it was planted in 1955. So that's the oldest parcel that exists in this valley. And so it's a massal selection of the local Syrah that here people call Serene. And it's very interesting. It's very different from all the other Syrahs that we have here. Also different from the Serene that we have in Brezem. And the main thing that's special is that it really doesn't react like any of the other Syrah parcels that we have. So it's it has a very big variation of yield. 1 year we will do 15 hectoliters per hectare, and then the next one will do 60 hectoliters per hectare. It is very sensible to coulure like a Grenache. It's earlier than the other vines in the growing in the spring, but it's ripen later in the summer. So it really reacts strangely to the weather, to whatever happens during the season. But we always get very surprising results with the grapes. And so out of this parcel are made 2 wines. The main production is the old vine Serine of Saint-Julien that you know. And then there is Le Clos that is made with the last 10 rows of the parcel up there. It's we're not exactly sure if it's also Serine or if it's another clone, but the grapes are a little bigger and with a lighter skin color. So we're not sure, but we put them separately, and that does the Clos, the Magnum bottles that you get. Something else that I can say about this place, some people who have already come here know, but this valley here, the Uves Valley, we are about 30 kilometers south of Cornas, and this valley marks the separation between the northern Rhone and the southern Rhone. So between northern Ardèche and southern Ardèche, geologically speaking, the hills that you see behind me are granitic soils, just like in Saint-Joseph or in Cornas. But just on the other side of the valley, it's limestone, and it's the same kind of limestone that you will find in most southern Rhone on the west bank and down to the Mediterranean Sea. So here on this parcel, the subsoil is the limestone from the other side, about 4 meters deep, but on the surface, we have granitic alluvials that come from the hills behind me. So in some places inside this parcel, you can find both limestone and granitic alluvials. And it's quite a sandy soil. So it's very interesting. And it's, in my opinion, it's the best place in Saint-Julien to grow the vine. So we're really happy that Eric and Laurence got the opportunity to buy this parcel because the soil is interesting. It's the oldest parcel here, and it's also one of the last Serene parcel that's planted in this area. And the result is really good. So over the coming years, we're going to graft the plant and try to replant some new parcels with this graft. And yeah, just the last thing to say is you can see probably that it's already quite green. So far, this parcel is the most advanced in terms of the growth of the plant. The other parcels are much later than that. Just as Eric showed you in Charnay, it's more like that. So we're going to do the bud break, the bud shooting. We're going to start on Monday. And but the season looks quite good so far. We can already see some little grapes in the Serine, and so far it's good, but we are suffering from heavy droughts already in spring, and hopefully we're waiting for a little bit of rain next week. But we've been waiting for like 3 months, and so far nothing has come. So I don't know if you have some questions about the parcel or.
Martin, Josef is asking what's the temperature differences here in this particular valley compared to the Brezem or the rest of the northern Rhone? Is there a big difference?
Yes, it's different. I mean, in terms of climate here, we are really closer to the northern Rhone climate than the southern Rhone. So generally speaking, we have the same temperatures than what you get in Saint-Joseph or in Cornas. But in terms of orientation, the slope is more oriented south here in Saint-Julien. So it gets a little drier and a little hotter during the summer. So that's for Saint-Julien. And Brezem is a little bit different because the Brezem is really full south oriented. So it gets a lot of hot air and reverberation because the soil is very white. So that's during the day. But then during the night, we are just above the Drôme Valley, which is quite humid. And so the night gets really cool in Brezem. So there is a much bigger temperature variation from day to night in Brezem, and Saint-Julien is more steady. So both in terms of climate and in terms of soil, it's very different in Brezem and Saint-Julien, although it's like 10 kilometers from one to the other.
I think we're going to go back to Eric now, Martin. So thank you very, very much. It's great to see you. Be well. We see you soon, I hope. Okay.
Thank you very much, and see you soon. Take care.
So we are back at my place where the whole family lives. And I would love to talk about something that has been my main focus for a few years now. So the whole idea is to keep genetic diversity and get back the knowledge of grafting that Vigneron has been doing for years, since the phylloxera, and even before, by the way, and that we totally lost a few years ago, and gave the knowledge to the nurseries that are selling now billions of vines that are extremely poorly made, and that are also mainly coming from selected clones. With the global warming, we have to face new times, new conditions, and obviously having one clone in one vineyard is not a good idea. And we see, a lot of people see that the old vines, the vineyards made out of old vines, are doing a lot better to adapt to the new conditions that the clonal vineyards. So I started 3-4 years ago to graft, to do my selections from our vineyards and some friends' vineyard, old vines, non-clonal. Martin probably talked about the serine. So I started to do my own grafting, both ways. So you probably all know that because of phylloxera, we have to graft Vitis vinifera, which is the European vines, on the top of rootstocks that are mostly hybrids between vinifera and American vines that are resistant to phylloxera. So we have to do this grafting either before planting the rootstock or after planting the rootstock. So I will show you now how we do that. So we have shoots coming from the vines that we want to save in a way. So we did that with some cinsault. Martin took off some very old vines of cinsault. So here is my material. So we'll take some buds from senso to make the graft. So this is kept in a refrigerator. So the whole idea is to graft over the rootstock 1 or 2 buds of the senso. So typically, what I use as a technique is what we call whip and tongue grafting. En français, it's greffe anglaise complexe. So you do a cut, a nice cut. So this is the vinifera bud. And we'll do the same cut on the rootstock. And now we have to do this small thing here on the rootstock, the same on the bud. And we will just adjust the two this way. So you can see. So the next step now is to protect so the bud from the vinifera won't dry. Okay. After we've done that, we go to the next step. Which is called stratification. So this is a very unusual way to do it, okay? Since I don't do thousands and thousands of vines, I do a few hundreds a year, maybe 1,000. I use this little tent in the garden so I can get the warm from the sun. And I have to keep these things for something like 20 days, 15 to 20 days at a temperature of 30 Celsius. I have no idea in Fahrenheit. 100. So it's quite warm. Eh? It's warmer than outside. And these tiny vines are kept in bins. With here some specific type of soil, and we'll keep them until, as you can see, roots are starting to grow. Okay, and you won't see it because it's difficult to see. But under the bee wax, we start to see something white. you see the same thing here. So this is the start of roots. And this type of white strip, you will find it at the weld between the graft and the rootstock, which means that the weld is starting to work. And so next week, I will plant those. So it's something like 600 of them. I will plant those so they will start to grow, and I will be able to plant them next year. So this is typically a nursery thing. So we can see here a lot of those starting to grow. So it's a bit of work, but it's worth it because I can choose my genetic material either for the vinifera or for the rootstocks. And I can use what I show you, so the whip and tongue grafting, which is thousands of times much better than the omega grafting that is industrially made these days. To give you one example, I know I'm slow, but I'm making probably 150 grafts a day. With the omega grafting machines, they make 10,000 each. And usually, omega grafting lead to 25 to 50% of bad graft. Whip and tongue, when it's properly made, it's 95% good. And also, we've been in trouble. So I went into this grafting thing because we are in trouble with the Syrah in France. It's been the case for 20 years now. All the vines that are 20 years old or so are dying. And because of something called dépérissement, but we know now that omega grafting has a huge responsibility for that. And in the old serine vineyards that were whip and tongue grafted, and grafted usually in the field, well, a mix of both. The 50 or 60 years old vineyard, you find only 5% of vines dead. In a young vineyard now, it's something like 60% after 20 years. So I will show you in a weird way what field grafting is looking like. So let's think that this is a rootstock 2 or 3 years ago. And so the thing that we will do in the vines is we can do the same. So the whip and tongue. So typically I use this tool to get the cut. Then I will take a shoot. Well, so let's say that this is my cut that I want to grab. So I do my cut. Then here I do the same. Then I just have to match them. And then I take a little bit of tape and I just have to wrap it around so it won't dry again. Huh? So that's the whole idea is to avoid the grass, the bud to dry. This is a specific tape. In the old times, they used to do it with the raffia, which is very efficient too. So that was one type of grafting. But you realize that since I cut the rootstock. If the graft is not working, I will lose the rootstock probably. Yeah? So there is another type that I've been using now, and which is very interesting. And this is a type of cheap bud on young rootstock like this. So you see I have two shoots here. So if I graft with the chip here, if the chip is not working, this will grow this year, and the rootstock will still be alive next year. So this is how we do it. So the idea is to get rid of the bark here. And then I need just one bud here. So that's the bud. You see the green thing here, the cambium. And then I will just match the cambium like this. So you see this is not long enough. So I have a second chance. And then again, I will tape it so it won't dry. So this is it. And of course, I will leave only one shoot here to get another chance next year if this chip didn't work. So that's what I'm doing now, mostly in the field, compared to the whip and tongue that I show you. Because again, we have a second chance here that we don't get with the whip and tongue. Okay? So this allows us, gives us a lot of freedom in terms of selection of the materials. To give you an idea, next year we will start Martin to build a vineyard made with very old grapes, typical of Ardèche, that nobody grows anymore. These grapes are called Exparia, Gouspirou, and nobody is growing these grapes anymore, and nobody is grafting them anymore. So the whole idea starting next year will be to get, like for Exparia, there is only one plant of Exparia alive in the world, in the Conservatoire de Vassal. They will ship us 2 shoots during the winter, so it's probably 12 buds. And we will start again. Out of these 12 buds, we'll start again to make Exparia from the only plant that is remaining. And, well, let's see. You have to come back visiting 5 or 10 years from now, and maybe we will have half an hectare of Exparia that was all made and grafted, starting with the only one that is remaining. And I wouldn't find any nursery that accept to do this. So this is a neat trick for the growers to start again with grapes that nobody knows. It could be a discovery to taste the wine made out of these grapes. I have no idea how to taste like. So yes, grafting for me, taking back the grafting for the vigneron is key for the future. to select grapes that are doing better in the warmer climate that we have now, drier too, than the grapes we've been growing for 1 or 2 centuries. Typically, Terroir is a grape that was known for making low alcohol wine, high acidity, not early ripening. So it sounds like the perfect grape to replace Terroir in the future in vineyards like Vineyard. That's the idea. I hope you enjoyed.
It was great, Eric. There's at least one question. In your little nursery that you're doing by the side of the house, how many do you keep in there maximum at any given time? Je pas me sentir.
Something I get something like 250 grafts by bin. So it's 750, but in the tent I can put up to 1,500. So that's quite a lot, in fact. 1,500 is the maximum I can graft in a year, honestly. And this is almost half an hectare that we can replant with those in Saint-Julien. So it's plenty enough. I don't really need to have a bigger thing. And it's very efficient. It's funny because it's a very frugal way to do it, but it's very efficient. I can keep the temperature inside with a small heater for the day and night, whatever the weather is outside. Yeah, sorry for the technical problems.
It happens.
And I hope it was good anyway.
Okay, we thank Eric and everybody, and thank you all for coming. And it'll be posted somewhere at some point if there's people who want to see it later on. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, bye. Bye-bye.